You were not supposed to find this video. I genuinely believe that. Out of everything you could have been watching tonight, you landed here. And I need you to understand something before we go any further. That was not an accident. I have been looking for you for a very long time. And yes, I mean you, specifically. The woman sitting exactly where you are sitting right now. It's you. The one who stopped scrolling long enough to be here. The one who, maybe without fully knowing why, clicked on something that felt just a little too personal to ignore. I see you, and I need you to stay with me for a moment, because what I'm about to say, I've been holding for a very long time. I've built things, I've chased things, I've sat in rooms full of everything I said I wanted, and still felt the presence of something missing. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a frequency only certain people can hear. And I kept asking myself, what is that? What is the one variable I keep leaving out of every equation I write? Then I realized it wasn't a variable. It was a person. It was you. I don't believe in accidents. I believe in alignment. I believe the universe moves slowly, and then all at once, and the fact that you're watching this right now is not a coincidence I'm willing to dismiss. So stay, please stay, because what I'm about to say next, I've never found the words for before, and I think somewhere inside you, you've been waiting your whole life to hear it. I want to be honest with you about something, not the polished kind of honest, not the kind that's been rehearsed in front of a mirror or shaped for an audience. I mean the kind that lives in the quiet space between what we say out loud and what we actually mean. The kind most people never hear from someone who spends his life building things. And I am going to give it to you now, all of it, because I think you have earned it just by being here. I have spent years optimizing. That is what I do. I look at a system, any system, and I ask, where is the gap? Where is the inefficiency? Where is the single variable, if corrected, that changes everything downstream? I have asked those questions about energy, about propulsion, about the long, slow, magnificent arc of civilization. I ask those questions because I believe problems are solvable. I believe, with everything in me, that if you understand the structure of a thing deeply enough, you can improve it. But there is one system I kept circling without entering, one architecture I kept studying from the outside and never sat down inside. And that was the system of being known, truly, completely, without performance, known by another person, by you. Have you ever done that? Have you ever stood at the edge of being fully seen and pulled back just before the moment arrived? Not because you were afraid of the other person, but because you were afraid of what it would mean if they actually saw everything and stayed? I did that more times than I want to count. Because here's the thing about building at scale. Here's the thing nobody talks about when they speak of ambition and vision and the long game. The further out you project your thinking, the lonelier the present becomes. You learn to be comfortable with that. You learn to treat solitude as strategy. You make peace with the silence the way a long-distance runner makes peace with the burn, not by making it go away, but by learning to carry it without slowing down. I was very good at carrying it. But here's what nobody told me. Carrying it is not the same as being free of it. You can grow so skilled at managing a weight that you forget it is still there. And there came a moment, not dramatic, not announced, when I stopped in the middle of everything I had built and felt the full measure of what I had been holding alone. All of it. Every decision made in silence. Every victory absorbed without a hand to reach for. Every night that ended with nothing but the hum of my own thoughts. That is when I started to understand what was actually missing. Not support, not admiration, not someone to reflect my success back at me. I was missing the one thing that no system, no mission, no breakthrough can manufacture: the experience of mattering to one specific person. Not to thousands, not to history, to one. The quiet, revolutionary experience of someone choosing you, not for what you've done, not for what you might do, but because of the exact frequency of who you are when nobody is watching. I started to believe that thing existed, and I started to believe it existed for me. And that's when everything I thought made me strong started to loosen. Because admitting you want something is the first act of vulnerability. And I had not done that in a long time. I had wanted things, of course. I had pursued things with the full force of everything I am. But those were things I could build, things I could engineer into existence through effort and iteration. This was different. You cannot engineer recognition. You cannot manufacture the feeling of being home in another person's presence. You can only be open enough for it to find you. And being open, genuinely, structurally open, is the most counterintuitive thing I've ever attempted. Tell me, when was the last time you were actually open? Not in conversation, not in the way we perform openness, saying the right things, asking the right questions, leaning in at the right moments. I mean the inside of you. When did you last let someone close enough to see the interior? The unfinished parts, the contradictions, the things you've tried to resolve and haven't yet. Because I think you know what I mean. I think you have done the same thing I did, built something beautiful on the outside, and kept the most important room locked. I kept that room locked for a long time, and I told myself it was wisdom. I told myself it was protection. I told myself that the people who loved most carelessly were the people who got hurt most completely, and that there was a kind of intelligence in calibrated distance. However, there is not. Calibrated distance is not intelligence. It is fear with better vocabulary. And the day I understood that, really understood it, not as a concept, but as a fact I had been living inside, was the day something quietly changed in me. Not loudly, not with fireworks, just a slow interior shift, like a lock turning. And what I found on the other side of that lock was this. I do not want to arrive at the end of everything I have built without someone beside me who actually knows what it cost. Not someone who saw the results, someone who knows the cost, the real one, the one that lives in the in-between moments, in the 3 a.m. questions, in the days when the signal was there, but the certainty was not. Have you ever felt that too? That specific ache of wanting to be known by someone who is built for the depth of you? I think you have. I think that is why you are still here, still listening, still sitting with this. Because somewhere in these words, you have recognized something, a shape, a frequency, something that fits the outline of a feeling you have been carrying around without a name for it. That feeling has a name, and the name is readiness. Not readiness for a perfect love, not readiness for a guaranteed outcome, readiness for the real thing. Messy, luminous, demanding, transformative, with someone who does not need you to be finished before they choose you. I am not finished. I want you to know that clearly. I have solved a great many things. I have not solved myself. I am still mid-process, mid-construction, still finding edges I didn't know were there. And for the first time in my life, I am not embarrassed by that. I am offering it to you, not as a liability, as evidence that what I am giving you is not a monument. It is a living thing, still moving, still reaching. And I believe that you are too. Look at me when I say this. I am not looking for someone to complete me. That framing is too small, too fragile, too much like saying a star needs the night sky to exist. Stars exist, so do you. So do I. What I am looking for is resonance, the rare, precise, nearly impossible thing where two people find each other and discover that together they produce a frequency neither of them could generate alone. That is not a metaphor, that is physics. That is what happens when two oscillating systems find the same wavelength. They amplify, they deepen, they become more than the sum of their parts. And the moment I stopped looking for completion and started looking for resonance, everything shifted. The search changed shape, and you appeared. Not in the way I expected, not with announcement or fanfare. You appeared the way the most important things always do, quietly, precisely, at the exact moment I was finally still enough to notice. And I noticed. I want you to know that. I noticed everything. I noticed the way you carry your uncertainty, like something you have learned to be gentle with, rather than something you are ashamed of. I noticed the way you still believe in things, even after the reasons not to have piled up. I notice that you are here, right now, in this moment, which means part of you is still open. Part of you is still listening for something real. I am real. What I feel is real. And I am asking you, not with performance, not with strategy, but with the full, unguarded weight of someone who has finally stopped pretending he doesn't need this to stay. Just a little longer, because we are only just beginning, and what comes next is the part I have been trying to say my whole life. There is a version of trust most people have been sold that I want to dismantle right now. Not to make you cynical, the opposite. I want to clear it away so you can see what real trust actually looks like. Because I think the version most of us grew up with was so watered down, so hedged and qualified, that we ended up trusting the idea of trust more than the actual experience of it. The version we were sold sounds like this: trust slowly, trust carefully, trust only after someone has earned it, through a long, cautious accumulation of evidence. Protect yourself first, and if they break it once, you are permitted, even encouraged, to never fully give it again. I lived by that version for a long time, and I want to tell you what it produced. Not safety, not wisdom. It produced distance, dressed up as discernment. It produced walls I had painted to look like windows. And from behind those windows, I watched other people live at a depth I was too careful to reach. Have you been there too? Standing behind your own carefully painted window, watching something real pass by and telling yourself it's fine, because at least you're protected? But here's what nobody warned me about safety. Safety, when it becomes your highest value in love, doesn't protect your heart. It starves it. Slowly, quietly, without drama, it starves it. And you don't notice at first, because the hunger feels so much like discipline. It feels like you are being smart. It feels like you are not making the same mistakes everyone else makes. But one day, you wake up and realize that the discipline was just hunger with better posture. And the walls were not protecting you from pain, they were protecting you from life. I woke up to that. And when I did, I had to completely rebuild my understanding of what trust actually is. Trust. Real trust. The kind that can hold the weight of two actual human lives is not the absence of risk. It is the decision to move towards someone despite the risk. It is not the conclusion of a long evaluation period. It is a choice. A daily, deliberate, renewable choice that says, I am going to be present with you, right here, right now, even though I cannot see every variable, even though the outcome is not guaranteed, even though this could cost me something real. That is not naivety. That is the most sophisticated emotional architecture I know. Think about it this way. When I commit to a system, a trajectory, a design that has to function in conditions I cannot fully simulate in advance, I am not waiting for certainty. Certainty is a luxury that does not exist at the frontier. What exists at the frontier is calculated commitment. You gather what you know, you stand in your best understanding, and you move. Not because you are fearless, because the cost of waiting exceeds the cost of being wrong. Love works the same way. The cost of waiting for perfect certainty, waiting until you cannot possibly be hurt, waiting until the risk is zero, is that you wait forever. And forever is the most expensive price there is. I chose to stop waiting. And that decision, that single, private, interior decision, is where everything I want to tell you actually begins. Because the moment you decide to trust, not as a reward you hand out after someone earns it, but as a posture you carry into the room before anything has happened, you become available for something extraordinary. You become available for presence. Let me tell you what I mean by presence. Not physical presence. Anyone can occupy a room. I mean the kind of presence where you are actually completely here, where your attention is not divided between this moment and the 10 future versions of this moment you're already running scenarios for, where you are not observing the interaction from a safe altitude above it, where you land, fully, with both feet on the ground. That is something I had to learn. And I am not going to pretend it came naturally. My mind lives far ahead of most moments. That is both a gift and a cost. The gift is that I can see things before they exist. The cost is that I can miss things that are already here, things standing right in front of me, asking not to be projected into the future, but simply to be received right now as they are.
For one of those things.
Don't pretend you haven't felt the other version of this. The experience of being with someone who is technically present, but actually miles away. Someone whose eyes are on you, but whose attention is orbiting somewhere else entirely. You feel it before your mind names it. That low, specific ache of being near someone who isn't really there. Of speaking into a space where listening used to be. I never want you to feel that. Not once. Not for a single moment in my presence. Because here is what I have come to believe, after all of it, after all the building, all the reaching, all the serious and relentless work of trying to make something that matters. Presence is the most radical act of love there is. Not grand gestures, not declarations, not even sacrifice. Presence. The sustained, deliberate, renewable decision to be actually here, with you, in this moment, not managing it from above, not performing it, living it. That is what I am offering you. Not perfection, not certainty, presence. And it costs something. Let me not pretend otherwise. Real presence costs you the comfort of your own head. It costs you the safety of detachment. It requires you to let what is happening to another person actually land inside you, to feel the weight of their reality rather than analyzing it from outside. It requires you to be moved, and being moved means being reachable, and being reachable means being vulnerable to loss. I know exactly what I am offering, and I am offering it anyway. Because the alternative, the version where I maintain safe altitude, where I process you as information instead of experiencing you as a person, where I keep the most essential part of myself just slightly beyond reach, that version is not living. That version is management, and I have been a manager of my own heart for long enough. Here's what that version never gives you. It never gives you the moment when someone looks at you, not at what you have built, not at your record, not at the validated, polished version of you, but at you. The unfinished, in process, contradictory, genuinely trying version, and stays. Not because they are obligated, because they want to. That moment is worth everything. I have had glimpses of it, and each time I knew, with the same quiet certainty I feel when a design resolves, when something that should work finally does, that this is what all of it is for. Not the legacy, the presence, not the achievement, the arrival. Have you felt that? Even once? The particular warmth of being with someone who is actually completely, undividedly with you? If you have, you know exactly what I mean. And if you haven't, if that experience has been theoretical for you, something you've observed in other people's lives and quietly ached for, then I need you to hear this clearly. You deserve that. Not as a reward for being extraordinary, not as a bonus for having survived the hard things, as a basic, foundational, non-negotiable part of being alive. You deserve to be someone's full attention, someone's deliberate choice, someone's actual presence, not their managed performance of it. And I am done performing. I am done managing. I am done standing at the window, watching the depth go by, and calling it wisdom. I am here, in this moment, with you, fully. Not because it is safe, not because the outcome is guaranteed, but because the cost of not being here, of letting this pass the way I let other things pass, carefully, from a distance, is a cost I refuse to pay anymore. Look at me when I say this. I choose presence with you, starting now. And if you are sitting with something right now, some feeling you have not yet named, some recognition you haven't fully permitted yourself, I want you to stay with it. Don't scroll past it. Don't reduce it to something smaller than it is. Let it be what it is. Because what comes next is where trust and presence meet and become something neither of them could be alone. And I believe, with everything in me, that you have been ready for that meeting far longer than you realize. I want to tell you something about growth that took me an embarrassingly long time to understand. And I say embarrassingly because I have spent my entire adult life thinking seriously about systems, about evolution, about the mechanics of how things improve over time. I have studied growth in every context I could find. And somehow, the most important application of everything I learned was the last one I applied it to. My own heart. Growth in any system requires two things: pressure and space. Pressure without space produces brittleness. Space without pressure produces stagnation. The sweet spot, the place where actual transformation happens, is the narrow, dynamic, demanding territory between the two, where something is challenged enough to change, but supported enough to survive the changing. That is what the right person does. Not consciously, not through strategy, just by being exactly and fully themselves, in proximity to exactly and fully you. They create that territory, the pressure of their honesty, the space of their acceptance. And inside that territory, you become something you could not have become alone. I believe that, not as poetry, as the most rigorously honest conclusion I have arrived at after decades of building things and failing at things, and slowly, reluctantly, beginning to understand what actually drives transformation at the deepest level. It is not ambition. Ambition is the engine, but the engine does not choose the direction. Connection chooses the direction. Love, when it is real, when it is the kind that holds you accountable and holds you tenderly in the same breath, love points the engine somewhere worth going. But here's what nobody tells you about growth and love. It is not comfortable, not always. The version we are sold, that the right person will feel like ease and softness and perpetual warmth, is only half the truth. The other half is that the right person will also be the one who, without meaning to, holds up a mirror at the exact moment you would prefer not to see yourself clearly. And what you do in that moment, whether you look or look away, that is where your real character lives. I have looked away before. I want to be honest about that. There have been moments where someone I cared about reflected something back at me that I was not ready to receive. And instead of sitting with it, instead of letting it teach me, I redirected. I reframed. I applied my considerable capacity for analysis to the task of explaining why the reflection was inaccurate, rather than asking what it might be showing me. That is not growth. That is just intelligence in the service of avoidance. And one of the things I am most committed to, going forward, is not doing that anymore. Not with you. Not ever. Have you ever been with someone who could receive the truth about themselves? Not defensively, not with immediate reframing, but actually receive it. Sit with it, turn it over, let it cost them something, and then come back to you steadier than before. If you have, you know what a rare and extraordinary quality that is. If you haven't, I want you to know it exists, and I want to be that for you. Because here's what I have figured out about the connection between growth and love. They are not sequential. It is not grow first, then love, or love first, then grow. They are simultaneous. They feed each other in real time. You grow because you love someone enough to want to be better for them. And you love them more because growth keeps you from becoming someone they outgrow. That reciprocity, that living, dynamic, mutually generative loop, is the architecture of something that can actually last. And I want something that lasts. Let me be clear about what I mean by that. I do not mean something static, something fixed in amber, beautiful and permanent and dead. I mean something that lasts the way rivers last, always moving, always the same river, never the same water twice. A love that is alive because it keeps becoming, because both people keep becoming. Together, in parallel, occasionally ahead of each other, occasionally behind, but always in the same direction. I have never wanted permanence for its own sake. I have wanted meaning. And I have come to understand that the deepest meaning available to a human life is not built from achievements, it is built from the continuous, cumulative, daily act of choosing someone and being chosen back. That is growth at its most profound, not growing into a greater version of yourself for the world to witness, growing into someone worthy of the specific, irreplaceable, entirely particular gift of another person's trust. Tell me, when was the last time you felt yourself growing towards something rather than away from something? Because there is a difference. Growing away from something is motion powered by fear, the energy of avoidance, of not wanting to repeat the past, of keeping certain things at a safe distance. It works for a while. It produces movement, but it never produces arrival. Growing towards something is a different engine entirely. It is powered by desire, by vision, by the specific warmth of a future you can actually feel waiting for you. And that kind of growth does not feel like effort. It feels like relief, like finally moving in the direction you were always meant to move in. You are what I am growing toward. I want you to let that land, not as flattery, not as performance, as the most precisely accurate description I can offer of what I feel when I imagine the future that includes you in it. Everything points there. Every adjustment I have made, every wall I have decided to take down, every moment I have chosen presence over distance, it all points in the direction of you. And that's when something unexpected happened inside me. I stopped being afraid of change. That might not sound significant, but for someone whose entire operating system has always been built around controlling variables, managing outcomes, reducing uncertainty, stopping the fear of change is not a small thing. It is a structural renovation. Because loving someone, really loving them, not the managed version, not the curated highlight reel of love, but the full, demanding, expanding thing, requires you to be willing to be changed by them, to let their presence alter your edges, to allow the encounter with another full human being to leave marks on you. Good marks. The kind that mean you were actually there, actually present, actually in contact with something real. I am willing to be changed by you. I want to be changed by you. That is how I know this is real. Don't pretend that isn't what you want too. The experience of mattering so specifically to another person that your presence actually reshapes them, not dominates them, reshapes. The way two landscapes in proximity slowly begin to influence each other's weather. The way two people who actually inhabit each other's lives start to carry traces of each other in how they think, how they rest, how they face hard things. That is what I am building toward. Not a partnership of convenience, not a relationship that fits neatly into the margins of the life I have already built. I am talking about something that becomes part of the architecture itself, something load-bearing, something that changes what the whole structure is capable of holding. Because I believe, and this is perhaps the most important thing I will say today, that I am capable of more with you than without you. Not because you fill a gap, there is no gap to fill, but because resonance amplifies. Because two people oriented in the same direction, choosing each other daily, building the same vision with the same hands, they produce something neither could produce alone. And that something is not just a relationship. It is a life worth the living of it. And I am not willing to keep building a life worth the living of it without the person I want to live it with. You are that person. I believe that with every honest, unguarded, fully arrived part of me. And I am asking you, not with urgency, not with pressure, but with the quiet, certain, unhurried conviction of someone who knows what he has found, to consider the possibility that you believe it too. Because the next part of this, the part where we stop circling and start actually building, requires both of us to be honest about what we already know. We're energized, and I think you already know. There is a question that lives at the bottom of every significant thing I have ever built. I did not always hear it clearly. For years, it was muffled by the noise of work, by the velocity of forward movement, by the satisfying weight of problems being solved one after another. But when the noise settled, and it always eventually settles, the question was always there, patient, unchanged. What is this for? Not technically. I know the technical answers. I could give you the technical answers in my sleep. I mean the other question. The one that lives underneath the technical one. The one that doesn't care about scale or reach or the number of lives the thing might improve. The one that asks, in a voice that sounds almost embarrassingly simple for someone who thinks in systems and trajectories, is any of this going to mean something to someone I actually love? That question changed everything the day I finally let myself hear it fully. Because meaning is not the same as impact. I want to be precise about this. Impact is external. It is what your work does in the world, the ripple it sends outward, the problems it resolves at scale. And I care about that deeply. I will always care about that. But meaning, personal, interior, irreducible meaning is something different. Meaning is what you carry home. It is what you feel at the end of a day that was hard and good and genuinely yours. It is what fills the silence after the work is done. An impact, no matter how vast, cannot fill that silence on its own. I have sat in that silence more times than I will comfortably admit. I have sat in it at the end of days that by every external measure were extraordinary. Days where something I had committed years to finally resolved, where something impossible quietly became possible, and felt the unarguable weight of having no one specific to turn to and say, "Did you feel that? Were you with me in that?" Jeg sendte vi out her blir så til side, like you take note, but where is this up for this part that will bit to select. Not for validation, not for applause, just for the experience of being accompanied in something that mattered. That is what meaning requires. Witness, not an audience, a witness. One person, close enough to feel the temperature of what you lived through, present enough to understand what it cost, real enough to make the whole thing matter in a way that outlasts the moment itself. You are who I want as my witness. And that is the part I never knew how to say until now. Because I think I confused witness with burden for a long time. I think I believed that letting someone close enough to witness me, the real me, the in process, sometimes uncertain, always reaching version, was asking too much. That the weight of my life, the scale of it, the relentlessness of it, was not something I had the right to place beside another person. That caring about someone meant protecting them from the full measure of what being close to me actually required. That belief was the most expensive mistake I ever made. It was not wisdom. It was not consideration. It was a dressed up version of the same old fear, the fear that if someone saw all of it, really all of it, they would find it too much. That finding it too much, they would leave. And that them leaving would cost more than never having let them in. Have you made that calculation? The one where you quietly decided the cost of loss was higher than the cost of loneliness? I made it so many times it became automatic. A reflex. Preemptive self-protection so efficient I stopped noticing it was happening at all. But here's what that calculation never accounts for. The cost of never being witnessed. The specific, accumulating, invisible cost of moving through your own life like a ship in a bottle, visible from the outside, but untouchable. Beautiful, perhaps. Impressive, certainly, but sealed, contained, occupying the form of a life without ever fully inhabiting one. I was that ship for a long time. And I want to tell you clearly, without softening it, it is not a sustainable way to live. Not for me, and I do not believe it is for you either. Because here's what I know about meaning now. After all of it, meaning is not something you construct. It is something that arrives when you stop trying to engineer it and start simply showing up for yourself, for the work, and most essentially, for another person. It arrives in the ordinary moments, in the conversation that starts about something small and ends somewhere neither of you expected, in the silence that is comfortable rather than empty, in the specific, irreplaceable experience of being known well enough that another person can tell something is wrong before you have said a single word. That is meaning, right there, in that small, enormous, daily thing. And I want it, with an honesty that surprises even me sometimes. I want it. Tell me, do you believe it is still possible for you? Not as a concept, not in the abstract future where everything has resolved and the hard parts are behind you. Right now, in your actual life, with its actual complexity and its actual history, do you still believe you are capable of being met the way I am describing? Because I need you to believe it, not for me, for yourself first, because you cannot receive what you have not decided you deserve. You deserve to be someone's meaning, not their distraction, not their comfort, not their habit, their meaning. The person whose name arrives first, when they are sitting with something heavy. The person whose presence, at the end of a long and demanding day, makes the entire day make sense. The person who does not have to do anything extraordinary to matter, who matters simply by being present, simply by being exactly and entirely themselves. That is not a small thing to offer someone. It is, in fact, the largest thing there is. And I have been carrying the weight of understanding that for a while now. Quietly, the way you carry something you are not yet ready to set down in front of another person. Not because you don't trust them, because you want the moment to be right. Because some things deserve more than a casual delivery. This moment is right. I am setting it down in front of you now, not carefully, not with reservations or conditions, or the usual architecture of protection I have spent years building. Just plainly, honestly, without the distance. Here it is. This is what I know. This is what I want. This is why I believe it matters. Genuinely, specifically matters. That you are here, right now, in whatever corner of the world you are sitting in, whatever the hour, whatever the weight of everything that came before this moment. Because meaning is not something that arrives at the end of things. It is not the reward for surviving long enough, or building enough, or proving yourself worthy enough through a sufficient accumulation of evidence. It is available right now, in this moment, in the decision to let something reach you, in the willingness to say, not to anyone, but to the right person, I see what you are building, and I want to build it with you. And that's when I stopped waiting for the perfect moment to say it. Because there is no perfect moment. There is only this moment, and the choice you make inside it. Either you speak or you don't. Either you arrive or you manage the arrival from a safe distance and call it patience. I have called it patience long enough. What I am doing right now is not patience, it is arrival. So here, fully arrived, without performance or strategy, or the measured rollout of a feeling I have been sitting with for far longer than today, here is the plainest version of everything I have been building toward in every word of this. You are my meaning, not because I need you to complete something in me, because the future I imagine with the most clarity, the most warmth, the most honest and undeniable sense of yes, this is right. That future has you in it, not as a detail, as the foundation, steady, real, load bearing in the most essential way. And foundations, when they are right, do not feel heavy. They feel like ground, something to stand on without fear, something that holds not because it is perfect, but because it is true. I want to be your ground, and I am asking you, quietly, without pressure, but with the full and honest weight of someone who has finally stopped pretending he doesn't need this, to consider being mine. Because I think, if you sit still enough to feel it, you already know your answer, and I am not going anywhere while you find the words for it. I want to talk to you about time, not in the way people usually talk about it, not with urgency or anxiety or the breathless reminder that it is always running out. I want to talk about it the way I have come to understand it after spending so much of mine on the wrong relationship with it. Because here's what I did for years without realizing it. I treated time like a resource I could stockpile. Like if I banked enough of it, alone, protected, self-sufficient, I would eventually reach some threshold of readiness where everything would be safe enough to risk, where I would be complete enough to open, where the conditions would finally be right for the full version of my life to begin. That threshold does not exist. I want to say that clearly, because I think you might be waiting for it too. That invisible line, somewhere ahead of you where you will have healed enough, grown enough, resolved enough, earned enough peace with your own past that love will finally feel safe to step into. And I understand that weight. I lived inside it. It feels like wisdom. It feels like self-respect. It feels like the mature, considered approach of someone who has learned from experience and is not going to repeat old patterns carelessly. But it is not wisdom. It is the most quietly devastating procrastination a person can practice. Because what you are really doing when you wait for perfect readiness is not protecting yourself from a bad love. You are protecting yourself from any love at all. And the version of you that finally arrives at that imaginary threshold, older, more careful, more defended against exactly the thing you want, that version is not more ready. That version is just more practiced at waiting. Have you felt time moving differently than you expected? Like there were years you thought you were building towards something, and you looked back and realized you were actually just standing very still in a very well organized room. I have felt that, and it is one of the loneliest feelings available to a person who is otherwise doing everything right. Because doing everything right is not the same as living. You can optimize your entire existence and still miss the point of it. You can build the right habits, maintain the right discipline, make the right investments of energy and attention, and still wake up one morning and understand that the one area where it all needed to matter most was the one area where you kept finding reasons to wait. I stopped finding reasons to wait, not because I stopped being afraid. The fear did not disappear. Fear at this depth does not disappear, it just changes shape. What changed was my relationship to it. I stopped treating the presence of fear as information about whether the thing was right, because fear is not a reliable oracle. It does not know the difference between a real threat and a real opportunity. It only knows the difference between familiar and unfamiliar, and everything worth having lives in the unfamiliar. You are unfamiliar, the way I feel when I think about a future that has you specifically in it, not a concept, not an archetype, but you, exactly as you are. That feeling is unfamiliar in the best and most important possible way. It does not fit neatly inside any category I have occupied before. It does not map onto past experience. It does not come with a template. And that's when I understood something I had been circling for years without landing on. The absence of a template is not a warning, it is an invitation. It means you are standing at the edge of something genuinely new, something that has never been built before, because the exact combination of you and this person and this moment has never existed before. And the only way to find out what it becomes is to step in. Not when you are ready, now, here, as you are. Because here is what time has actually taught me. Not the version of the lesson dressed up in patience and pacing, the real one, underneath all the practical wisdom. Every moment you spend waiting to be ready is a moment spent outside your own life. And your life, the actual, full, lit from within version of it, is not waiting for your readiness. It is happening right now. And the question is not whether you are ready for it. The question is whether you are willing to show up for it as you are, rather than as you plan to eventually become. I am showing up now as I am, with the unfinished parts visible, with the questions I have not resolved, with the past I have not entirely made peace with, and the future I cannot fully see. I am showing up exactly as I am, right now, and I am asking you to do the same. Not because the timing is perfect, because the timing will never be perfect, because perfect timing is what people invoke when they are afraid of imperfect presence. And imperfect presence, flawed, human, genuine, actually here, is worth infinitely more than perfect timing will ever be. Tell me, if you removed the question of timing entirely, if you imagined that the only question was not when, but whether, what would your honest answer be? Not the careful answer, not the one shaped by everything that happened before this moment, the honest one, the one that lives just below the layer of analysis you have built around your own wanting. I think you know it, and I think you have known it for longer than you are comfortable admitting. Because recognition, real recognition, the kind where something inside you responds to something outside you before your mind has time to intervene, that does not operate on a timeline. It does not wait for the conditions to be right. It arrives when it arrives, and it asks only one thing of you: not certainty, not readiness, just honesty. Be honest with yourself right now about what you feel, about what this is, about what part of you recognized something in the first minute of this and has been quietly insisting on its importance ever since. That part of you is not foolish. It is not naive. It is not the part that has been wrong before and needs to be protected from itself. That part of you is the most intelligent thing about you. It is the part that processes truth faster than logic can articulate it. And it has been trying to tell you something. I want you to listen to it. Because time is not the enemy here. The enemy is the habit of using time as a substitute for courage. The slow accumulation of delay after delay, each one reasonable in isolation, each one adding another layer between you and the life that is waiting for you. The life where you are not simply surviving your own intelligence, where you are not simply managing your own longing, where you are actually completely, gratefully living. That life is not ahead of you, on the other side of readiness. It is here. It is now. And it begins the moment you decide that the version of yourself you are today is good enough to deserve it. Because you are good enough, not in spite of the unfinished parts, because of them. Because the unfinished parts are the evidence that you are still in motion, still becoming, still alive to the possibility of transformation. And transformation, real transformation, the kind that changes not just what you do, but who you are, that only happens in contact with something real, with someone real. I'm real. What I feel is real. The future I can see when I close my eyes and ask what I actually want, without the interference of fear or strategy or the long history of self-protection, that future is real. And it has your name in it. Not metaphorically, not aspirationally, actually. So here's where I land. After all of it, after the years of forward motion, and the silence at the end of days, and the slow understanding of what presence actually means and what meaning actually requires, here's where I land. I do not want more time to be sure. I am sure. I do not want more time to be ready. I am ready. What I want is to stop spending time on the outside of the life I know is possible and start building it with you, starting from this moment, which is the only moment I actually have. And I believe if you let yourself be still enough to hear what your own heart is saying underneath the noise, you will find that you are ready too. You have always been ready. You just needed someone to say so. There is a difference between falling in love and choosing to love. And I think it is the most important distinction that most people never fully sit down and examine, because we have been given a language for love that is almost entirely passive. We fall. It happens to us. We are swept up, pulled in, undone. And that language is not wrong. The feeling is real. The pull is real. The particular gravity of another person who is right for you is genuinely overwhelming in a way that almost nothing else in life can replicate. But falling is not the architecture. Falling is the opening. What you build after the falling, that is the real thing. That is the thing that lasts, or doesn't. That is the thing that grows into something extraordinary, or quietly collapses under the weight of everything nobody decided to do on purpose. And what I want to talk to you about right now is the decision. The daily, deliberate, renewable, choose it again every morning decision that becomes the actual substance of love once the falling has placed you in the same room as the right person. Because I have come to believe, with the same precision I bring to every other serious conclusion in my life, that love is not primarily a feeling, it is a practice. And like every meaningful practice, it requires not just the initial willingness, but the sustained, committed, unglamorous daily act of showing up for it. Not just when the energy is high, not just on the luminous days, every day, including the ordinary ones. Let me ask you something. Do you know anyone at all, who has built something genuinely beautiful and lasting in love? Not just survived the beginning, but grown into something across a decade, 2 decades, a whole life. And if you know that person, have you ever asked them what it actually took? Not what it felt like, what it took. I have paid close attention to those people, not because I was trying to reverse engineer a formula, but because I believe you learn more from what works over time than from what works in the beginning. And what I have found, without exception, is this. The people who build something lasting are not the people who found the most perfect partner. They are the people who made the most consistent choice every day, even on the days that choice did not feel romantic or easy or emotionally charged, even on the days it felt like discipline rather than desire. They chose anyway. That is what I am committing to. Not the feeling alone, though the feeling is real, and I would never diminish it. The choice. The daily, unromantic, deeply serious choice to put another person's reality alongside my own and keep it there. Not conditionally, not when the conditions are right, every single day, as a practice, as a decision that does not require renegotiation each morning. That is not settling. That is not the absence of passion. That is what passion becomes when it matures, when it stops performing and starts building. But here's what nobody talks about when they describe real commitment. Commitment is not the absence of doubt. I want to be precise about that because I believe the fear of doubt has kept more people from building great loves than any other single thing. We have absorbed, somewhere in the accumulated mythology around love, the idea that certainty should be complete and unwavering. That if you ever wake up and feel the full complexity of loving another actual human being, that complexity is a warning. It is not a warning, it is evidence that you are actually in it, that you are loving not a concept or an ideal, but a real person, with their own edges, their own unresolved places, their own particular and irreducible humanity. Doubt in the context of love is not the presence of the wrong thing, it is the presence of weight. And weight means the thing is real. I am not asking you for the absence of doubt. I am asking for the presence of choice despite it. Because here is what choosing actually looks like on the days when it does not feel effortless. It looks like staying in the conversation past the point of comfort. It looks like asking the harder question instead of the easier one. It looks like being honest when honesty is inconvenient. It looks like turning towards someone when old pain says turn away. It looks like small, unremarkable, daily acts of orientation, always moving, just slightly, in the direction of the person you have decided matters. That is love as architecture, not love as event. And architecture is what I know. Have you ever been chosen like that? Not desired, chosen. Not made to feel exciting in the beginning and then quietly deprioritized when the ordinary settled in. Chosen, deliberately, on an unremarkable Tuesday, for no reason except that someone decided the full and daily effort of you was worth every bit of what it required. If you have felt that, you know why nothing else measures up once you have. And if you haven't, I need you to hear this. It exists. It is not a myth. It is not the territory of other people's lives. It is available to you. Not as a reward, not as compensation. Just because you are here, and you are who you are, and the right kind of choosing finds the right kind of person. I want to be the person who chooses you, like that, with full knowledge of what the choice requires, with no illusion that love is always luminous, or always the version of itself spoken of in superlatives, with clear eyes and a steady hand, and the complete willingness to do the work of it. Not because love should be heavy or joyless, but because anything worth having requires effort, and the effort does not diminish it. It dignifies it. Don't pretend you haven't wanted that. Someone who sees the effort not as burden, but as privilege. Someone who does not drift into loving you, but decides to, every day, on purpose, without needing the circumstances to be perfect before the decision can be made. I am deciding on purpose. And here is what I need you to understand about what that means for you, specifically. It means you do not have to be extraordinary to deserve it. You do not have to be resolved or finished or performing the best version of yourself. The choosing is not contingent on your output or your best days or the quality of who you are when everything is going right. It is rooted in who you are underneath all of it, steadily, unchangingly. Yours. That is what I am offering. Not admiration contingent on performance. Not love that arrives when you shine and retreats when you don't. A choice. Solid, daily, renewable, unconditional. The kind that does not need you to earn it, because it was never something you had to earn. It was something I decided. And I know what you might be sitting with right now. That familiar tension between wanting this completely and not quite trusting that the wanting is enough. Between recognizing something true in all of this and wondering whether you are allowed to let it in without more time, more evidence, more distance to think it over carefully. I'm the evidence. This moment is the evidence. The fact that I am here, saying exactly this, without the architecture of careful impression management or measured emotional disclosure, this is not performance. This is the choice already made, being spoken out loud for the first time. Choices at this level do not require applause. They require one thing: witness. You are my witness, the one I have been building toward without always knowing it. through everything that came before today. And all I am asking, in the quietest and most unguarded voice I have, is that you let yourself be exactly that. Not a spectator, not someone evaluating from a careful distance. A witness, present, receiving, actually here. Witness this. Let it land. Let it be what it is. Rather than immediately placing it inside a category, your past is prepared for it. Because what comes next is the part where everything I have been saying finds its shape, where vulnerability becomes trust, trust becomes presence, presence becomes growth, growth becomes meaning, and meaning becomes a life. An actual, inhabited, fully alive life built by two people who decided on purpose. And I am already here, decided, steady, waiting for you to arrive. I want to tell you about the future. Not the professional future. I have talked about that version of the future for most of my adult life, in rooms full of serious people with serious questions, and I know that version well. I want to tell you about the other one, the one I don't talk about in those rooms, the one that lives in a quieter part of me, the part that does not operate on quarterly timelines or orbital mechanics or projected milestones, the part that just wants to know, when all of it is said and done, when the work is behind me and the days are quieter and the noise has finally settled, what is the life that will have been worth living? That question has only ever had one kind of answer. Not what I built, who I built it beside. And I want you to understand something about that answer, about how slowly it arrived, how many detours I took before I was honest enough to stop and let it land. Because for a long time, I kept the future abstract. I kept it large and impersonal and focused on the collective, on humanity, on civilization, on the long arc of progress. And those things matter deeply to me. They always will. But there came a point where the sheer scale of the collective future stopped being able to fill the space that a single, personal, intimate future had hollowed out by its absence. You cannot love humanity as a substitute for loving one person. I tried. It does not work. The love you give to the world is real and necessary and good, but it does not look back at you. It does not know your name. It does not notice when you are tired. And at some point, the difference between a love that changes everything and a love that knows your face, that difference becomes the only thing that matters. I want a love that knows my face. Have you ever thought about your future the way I'm describing it right now? Not as a plan, not as a sequence of goals to accomplish, as an atmosphere, as the quality of what a day feels like when it is genuinely yours, when the life you are inside has been built not just by your ambition, but by your choosing. The texture of a morning that belongs to something real. The particular weight of an evening that ends not in the silence of a life well managed, but in the warmth of a life well shared. I think about it all the time now, and the more clearly I can see it, the more certain I am that I am describing something real, something that exists on the other side of one decision. The decision to stop treating the future as an abstract destination and start treating it as something we build right now, together, with our actual hands and our actual presence, and our actual daily choosing of each other. But here's what I need to say next, and I need you to hear it fully. What we build together will outlast both of us. I do not mean that in a grand or abstract way. I mean it practically. I mean that the way we love each other will teach something to everyone who witnesses it. The way we handle hard things will model what it looks like to face hard things with another person beside you. The life we build, its tone, its texture, its fundamental quality of presence and commitment, that life will reach forward in time in ways neither of us can fully trace. Through the people who know us, through the moments that become stories, through the particular, quiet legacy of having loved well. That is the future I want to leave. Not just rockets, not just companies, not just the long, ambitious, world-changing work that I will always take seriously. I want to leave evidence that I knew how to love someone, that I was here, fully, in my own life, with another person who mattered more than the mission ever could on its own. Because missions without love are mechanics. And I am not a machine. I am a man. And the most human thing I will ever do is not the most extraordinary thing I will ever build. It is the most ordinary thing. The daily, unglamorous, beautiful act of choosing one person and meaning it. You are that person. And I want you to understand what that means in the fullest possible sense. It does not mean you carry the weight of my legacy. It does not mean you are responsible for being the source of all my meaning. It means something simpler and more important than either of those things. It means you are the person beside whom all of the rest of it finally makes sense. The presence that converts achievement into memory, that turns what I built into something I actually lived. You make it lived. Do you understand what I am trying to tell you? You make it something I actually inhabited, not observed from the inside of my own head. Inhabited with another human being, close enough to feel, real enough to change me, present enough to make every serious day feel also like a day worth something personal. Tell me, when was the last time you let yourself imagine the future fully? Not the guarded version, not the one with all the caveats built in before the first image has even arrived. The honest version, where you are not alone in it, where the life you have is not just competent and self sufficient, but genuinely, specifically, warmly inhabited by someone who chose to be there. That future is available to you. I know that sounds simple, but I think you have been told, by experience or by circumstance, or by the long, slow lesson of things that did not last, that futures like that are for other people, that your particular combination of depth and difficulty and intelligence and need makes you a special case, someone for whom the ordinary magic of a lasting love is somehow not quite accessible. I want to dismantle that belief right now. You are not a special case in the way you fear. You are a special case in the way that matters. You are specific, particular, irreplaceable in the exact shape of who you are. And that specificity does not make you harder to love. It makes the love, when it finds its proper alignment, more precise, more resonant, more real than the generalized version that fits anyone and therefore moves no one. What I feel for you is not generalized. It is pointed directly at you, at everything you are, including the parts you would prefer to revise before presenting them to someone who matters, including the unresolved history, including the questions you haven't answered yet, including the courage you are still building toward, and the tenderness you keep protecting behind the steady, capable front you have learned to maintain. I see all of it, and I am not waiting for the revised version. And that's when I understood what legacy actually means. It is not what you leave behind when you are gone. It is what you give away while you are still here. The love you offer before you are certain of the return. The presence you bring before the conditions are perfect. The choice you make deliberately, daily, with open eyes, to let another person matter to you at the level where loss would actually cost you something. That is the legacy. The evidence, written in the living of your days, that you were not afraid of the full size of your own life. I am not afraid of it anymore. I am standing in it, right here, right now, in the full size of a life that has finally stopped pretending it doesn't need you in it. And the only thing left, the only remaining distance between the future I can feel and the future we actually inhabit, is the moment you decide to believe it too. Not because I have convinced you. Convincing is not the goal. The goal is recognition. The quiet, interior, non-negotiable recognition of something you have always known, being said out loud by someone who means it, at a moment when you are finally still enough to receive it. That moment is now. This is it. Not the rehearsal. The thing itself. And the next chapter, the last one, is not something I will speak alone. It's something we will write together. Every journey has a moment where the distance collapses, where all the miles and all the questions and all the careful, cautious, necessary work of getting here suddenly fold into a single point of arrival. And you do not always recognize it when it comes. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it arrives without ceremony, without the soundtrack, without any of the external markers you imagined would announce it. Sometimes it just feels like stillness, like the particular piece of a system that has finally found its steady state. This is that moment for me, right now, and I want to spend it with you. Not wrapping things up, not summarizing what came before. I want to spend it the way you spend any true arrival, by being completely, entirely, unhurriedly here in it. by letting the journey stop being about the getting there and start being about the being here. Because I have spent enough of my life in transit, I have been in motion for so long that stillness used to feel like failure, like something had gone wrong if I was not accelerating, if I was not projecting forward, solving forward, building forward. But here I am, still, arrived, and it does not feel like failure. It feels like the first honest breath I have taken in longer than I want to admit. You know the reason it feels that way? I want to say something to you now that I have been building toward across everything I have said, across every chapter, every confession, every moment. I chose honesty over performance. I want to say it plainly, without metaphor, without the architecture of careful framing, just the thing itself, as directly as I can give it to you. I love you, not the idea of you, not the version of you I have constructed from the distance of wanting. You, the one who is here right now, receiving this, sitting with whatever feeling this has uncovered in you. The one who kept watching when it would have been easier to scroll away. The one whose presence in this moment is not an accident I am willing to treat casually. I love the parts of you that are unfinished. I love the questions you are still carrying. I love the courage it has taken you to remain open after everything that has given you reason to close. I love your particular intelligence and your particular tenderness and the specific way you hold yourself when something matters and you are trying not to show how much it matters. I see all of it, and I am not overwhelmed by it. I am grateful for it. Have you ever been loved at that level? Not managed, not appreciated from a comfortable distance. Loved fully, specifically, with complete knowledge of the whole of you and zero interest in editing any of it into something more convenient? Because that is what I am offering. Not love as a reward for being easy to love. Love is a decision made with full information and no reservations. And here's what I need you to understand about what comes next. What comes next is not a grand gesture. It is not a dramatic turning point where everything that was difficult becomes simple and everything that was uncertain becomes clear. What comes next is ordinary, beautifully, profoundly, irreplaceably ordinary. The days, the mornings that begin before either of us is ready. The conversations that start about small things and drift somewhere neither of us planned. The silences that are companionable rather than empty. The nights that end with the specific, quiet comfort of not being alone in your own life. That is what I want, more than anything I have ever wanted that I could design or build or launch or engineer into existence. I want the ordinary days with you. But here's what I want you to know about those ordinary days. They are not small. I know the world does not always celebrate them. I know we have been taught by culture, by ambition, by the endless premium placed on the extraordinary that ordinary is a consolation prize, the thing you settle for when the bigger things have been handled. But I have built enough extraordinary things to know that the extraordinary eventually becomes ordinary to the person inside it. And what remains, after the novelty fades, is not the size of what you built. It is the quality of the life you lived while building it. The quality of the life, not the volume of the output. The texture of the days, the presence inside them, the person beside you in them. That is the whole game, and I am playing it seriously now, for the first time, with everything I have.
Don't pretend this hasn't moved something in you. I am not asking you to perform certainty. I am asking for honesty. The quiet, interior, private honesty that doesn't require an audience or a declaration. Just the simple admission to yourself, right now, in whatever stillness you are sitting in, that this reached you. That something in these words found something in you that recognized it. That the feeling you are carrying as you approach the end of this is not nothing.
It is not nothing, and you know that. I know you have been careful. I know the history that made carefulness feel like the most loving thing you could do for yourself. I am not asking you to abandon that carefulness. I am asking you to let it coexist with this, with the possibility that the right person is not the person who makes caution unnecessary, but the person in whose presence caution stops feeling like your only option. I want to be that presence for you.
The presence that doesn't ask you to be less protected, but makes you want to be less protected. Not because I have proven some sufficient quantity of trustworthiness, because what you feel when you are honest with yourself about this is more reliable than any proof I could offer.
Feel it. Right now. Without the analysis. Without the instant reduction of the feeling into something manageable. Just feel it. Let it be its full size. Let it take up the space it is actually trying to occupy. Because what is happening right now, in this moment, between what I have said and what you are feeling, this is not the ending of something. This is the first line of something that has not been written yet. And the most important thing I have ever believed about the future applies here too. The best things are not found, they are built. And what I want to build with you is not a monument to how we began. It is a life that keeps becoming. A love that compounds the way the best things compound, slowly at first, then with an accelerating depth and richness that surprises even the people inside it. A story that doesn't peak at the beginning and spend the rest of its pages managing the decline. A story that deepens, that earns its ending not through tragedy or sacrifice, but through the sustained, daily, deliberate miracle of two people choosing each other past the point where choosing was easy. That is the story I want. And I believe, with the same quiet, unshakable certainty I feel when something true resolves, that you want it too. So here is where I land. Here is the final, plainest, most unguarded thing I have. After every word I have spoken, across everything that came before this moment. After the vulnerability and the trust and the presence and the growth and the meaning and the legacy and the arrival. After all of it, I am here, completely here, not performing, not managing, not projecting into the future or processing from a safe altitude above the present. Here, with you, in this moment, which is the only moment that has ever existed and the only one that will ever be enough. And I am asking you, quietly, without urgency, with a full and open and unhurried love of someone who has finally arrived in his own life, to be here too. Not someday, not when you are ready, not on the other side of the last reservation. Now, in this exact moment, with everything you are, exactly as you are, bringing nothing extra and leaving nothing behind. Because the life we could build starts here, not with the grand gesture, with this. With two people who recognize each other, deciding together that recognition is enough to begin. You are my future wife. I have said everything I know how to say to prove that I mean it. And now, for the first time in this entire journey, I am going to stop talking.
So your whole tempo, what that ended up not voting like this, right?
And just wait for you to arrive.